All right, so in the last couple of videos, we got into some of the basics of CSS. And kind of like I said, once you sort of learn the selector, property : value, that's kind of 70% of CSS. Then it just becomes learning what properties there are and what values that they take. A good reference is going back to our old friend W3 Schools and if you go under tutorials, you can go to where it says Learn CSS. And this is a good place to kind of start. So for instance, like if you went to CSS fonts, it actually talked about some of the stuff we just talked about, like font family and other things. Just like with HTML, you can kind of play around with the code. This is the style tag, and they're applying it here. You can see the different effects of it. So this is a good place to kind of learn. In the slides for today, we talk about, I'll show you guys some examples. So we've talked about color, we've talked about font size and font family. There's a CSS property, line height. Line height is the space between your lines. So there's, each line of text where text goes top to the bottom, like in English or in other Latin-based languages, there's the space between the lines. Okay, this is referred to as line height. In a more traditional typographical program like InDesign or something, it might be referred to as leading. I'm going to go back to exercise 2 here just to kind of show you. And so here it's like, let me preview this page again just real quick. So I guess I can't preview on this page, but so there's this line here, and the space between it is my line height. I'm going to go back. So this is typically, line height shows up when you have multiple lines of text. So my font size right now is, the basic size is 16, so I'm going to make it like 22 points. See how the space is increased a little bit? The higher the value, the bigger the space between lines. You want to be careful not to put too much space. Otherwise, it'll become too difficult to read. But that's what line height is. Font weight allows you to make something bold or not. So for instance, I could take the paragraph and I could do font weight, and I could set it to bold. Bold would make it bold. You can also take something that's defaultly bold and make it not bold. So for instance, headings are actually defaultly bold. If you wanted to overwrite that, you could say font weight and then just use normal. Normal means not bold in this case. So you can see how this became a thinner version. There's also font style. Font style allows you to apply italics to something. So for instance, I'm going to come here and say font style, use italic. You can also use oblique too. So you can see how this applies an italic. It also takes normal, which would remove any italic if there's any default italic. Text indent. Text indent is, it allows you to indent a paragraph. So if you have multiple lines of text, so for instance, here, this is a multiple line paragraph. Text indent would indent just the first line. So if I say something like text indent and, I don't know, maybe 50 pixels, what it's going to do is indent the first line of that area. So this is that indent, but it only affects the first line. It doesn't indent everything. So that would be a text indent. Letter spacing puts space between individual letters. This is kind of like tracking in a traditional typographical program like InDesign or Illustrator. So for instance, if I wanted to put more space, So if I wanted to space these letters out from each other, so from the L to the O, O to the R, R to the E, E to the M, all the way through, I could do that with letter spacing. So I could say something like this, letter spacing, and then what this would do is it's going to put 3 pixels of space between each letter. So you can see it kind of spaces them out a little bit. The higher the number, the more space. Okay. You can actually even use a negative number, and that would actually contract or make the text closer to each other. Okay. So text that's kind of spaced out feels a little more formal. You know, you might see that in like a fancy title for something. Text that's closer feels more constricted. Maybe that's kind of the visual style you want to go for. Text align allows you to align text. So for instance, right now my text, let's say I wanted to take this headline, I could align it to the left side, the right side, or the middle. So what I could do is text align, I'm going to say center. You can see it puts it in the center. I'm going to remove this text indent. And another option you can use in align is what's called justify. What justify will do is make your content go all the way from one side all the way to the other. So everything is nice and even. There's no ragged side or uneven sides, we would say. It does this by adding little bits of space in between words and letters. Text transform allows you to make something uppercase, lowercase, or capitalized. Let's do text decoration first, actually. That's something you probably use more often. Text decoration allows you to do things like underline, overline, or strike through. So for instance, let's say I wanted to add an underline to my heading. I could say text decoration, underline. There's my underline. You can also do what's called an overline, which literally puts it over. You could also do what's called a line through. That's basically the same as a strike through. Puts the line through the text. Where this might come in handy is some items actually come pre-formatted with a certain, like an underline, like for instance hyperlinks defaultly have an underline. If I didn't want that, what I could actually do is I'm selecting my hyperlinks by using the A tag, and I'm going to say text decoration none. What that's going to do is text decoration none will remove any default style. So there would be no underline, no strike through or overline. Last one I'll show you or talk about is text transform. Like I said, there's always going to be new stuff. So I mean, I'm showing you the ones that are probably the more popular ones. That doesn't, there always is going to be more stuff. So this is like why having a reference and occasionally checking and seeing what properties do and how you might use them, it could be handy for you. Text transform allows you to make something uppercase, lowercase, or capitalized. So for instance, here is my, this is my heading or my headline. Let's get rid of this text decoration. And I'm going to use text transform. I'm going to use uppercase. What that would do is use an uppercase version of every letter. So you can see I'm using an uppercase version of every letter. You could use lowercase. What that would do is basically use a lowercase version of every letter. So even if it was already capitalized, it would still use a lowercase. So just to show you, like this is supposed to be capitalized. Like let's say I did lorem like this, where I'm specifically using uppercase letters. It's still not going to do it because I specifically told it to use lowercase here. Or you could use what's called capitalize. What that's going to do is it's going to take the first letter of every word and it's going to capitalize it. So you can, it's going to maintain any existing capitals you have. Now, you might think, why would you want something like this? Think about it as like this. If you had like an article title, every letter of every word would be capitalized. So that's a good instance of like when you maybe would want to use something like that. Okay. One other thing I want to talk about, so we've talked a little bit about applying color, right? So here I'm using, I made my text red, or here I've made my text green, right? But if you've ever, if you ever tried painting a room and you've gone to Home Depot, you know there's no such thing as just red paint. For every color, there's many, many variations of color. So how can I be more specific with my color? Well, to do that, we're going to use something called a hexadecimal value. Hexa means 6, like a hexagon, which is a 6-sided figure. So what it is that there's 6 letters and characters. It goes 0 through 9, A through F. Okay, and essentially these are equivalent to the red, green, and blue channels. If you don't remember, those are the channels that make up all of the colors of a computer screen. Okay, so in other words, red light, green light, and blue light mix together and form all of the colors. The first 2 represent the red channel, the third and fourth represent the green channel, and the last 2 represent the blue channel. Essentially what it is that the 0 through 9 and A through F is a grayscale. So 0 would be pure black, 9 would be sort of a medium gray, and then F would be a pure white. So like FF in the red channel would be like a really, really bright red, whereas like a 0, 0 would be a really, really dark red, you know what I mean, like a crimson or something. And then you mix the red, the green, and the blue, and that forms the final color. All right, so something like this. So this is like a dark red, medium red, bright red. So you combine red, green, and blue, and you get your final color. Okay, this is a hexadecimal value. Now, you don't have to figure all this out. There's a lot of ways you can do it. What I like to do is usually I just go to Google and I type in the word color picker. Like this. This is a color picker. You can get color pickers in pretty much any standard. There's like a million ways you can get the different colors. You know, all Adobe products have a color picker. Like I said, you can literally just go to Google and type in color picker. This is a color picker. So let's say I wanted to use this very specific shade of red. I like this shade here. Down below, this is my hexadecimal value. Okay, what I'm going to do is just copy it by holding down Command or Control C. Go to your code editor. Just paste that bad boy in. All right. Let's go back and refresh, and there you go. So, as you can see, this is a match to this color here. Let's say I want to go back and choose a much darker red, like this crimson here. Choose that color. I'll come into here. Let's paste that. Okay. This is going to be a much darker shade of red. Might be hard to tell. It kind of looks black, but if you blew it up, it is a red. It's like a very, very dark red. Okay. In fact, if you're using Visual Studio Code, anytime you type in a number and you put your cursor right above it, you'll actually get a color picker. So if I put my cursor here, it's kind of hard. It sort of disappears. But if I go here, let's say I choose this light blue, this is actually the hexadecimal value for that particular light shade of blue. Okay. So this is my hexadecimal value. I'm going to do the same thing here. Maybe I'm just going to use the built-in color. So right now it's actually using what's called RGB. If you click on it, then it will go to hexadecimal. If you click on it again, it goes to what's called hue, saturation, and lightness. Then hue. I'm actually not sure what HWB is. It's a different color scheme. We just want this. There's many ways of measuring color. Kind of like there's different measurements to measure the width of something, like inches or centimeters or feet or yards. There's different ways of measuring color. For now, we're just going to use hexadecimal. That's the one that you're going to see the most often online, so let's use that. So I'm just going to choose, this is a particular deep shade here. And so this is the hexadecimal value. So not only does hexadecimal values give you more options, it also allows you to be able to match colors very easily. So let's say you were working with another designer and you wanted to make sure you both were using the same color. Rather than trying to describe it, which might be harder, you might say, oh, well, it's a dark red or it's a tomato red. You could literally just give the hexadecimal value. They could type in the hexadecimal value into their computer in a graphic design program, or, any color picker would let you actually, just type in, you can always just type in a hexadecimal value here. So if I did let's say I was trying to match this color, I could just copy it, paste it in to whatever I'm using as my program, and you can see you can match that color very easily. So hexadecimals are great ways to be very specific about the color you want to work with. Okay? So try that out, try the different, properties we talked about, play around with different shades of color. This is something you're going to be doing a lot when you start working with CSS.